Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Wheeler and today I want to show you how to make something reasonably useful for your Dungeons & Dragons game. Now, I'm happy to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, but I have found that there are a number of tools that I was quite keen to get and purchase, and I thought would be really useful for my game. But they are in fact quite difficult for me to get hold of in my country, and therefore require a lot of rigmarole or additional expense. Shipping is pretty brutal, and it all started off with me wanting something that was magnetic and something I could write on, because I'd seen this thing. This is the Game Mastery combat pad. But what I really wanted was something that didn't have all of the numbers and boxes all over it, because as you know, I run a YouTube channel and I need to have like a whiteboard so I can write stuff down as I'm presenting my videos. I also realized it would be useful on the fridge so I could write messages or make shopping lists and generally sort of communicate with everybody else in the house, and it would be useful for my videos and for my dungeon mastering games as a dungeon master, keeping notes that I could rub out later on, and if I could give one to my players it would be really helpful too. So really what I wanted was a flexible magnetic whiteboard that I could use in my game, and as it happens you can buy them online, but they're not quite the right size. I actually needed something a bit smaller. So what I've done is I've put together a little bit of information about how I've made my own. And as it happens, I have in fact made my own. I've done my test run. It all worked out pretty fine. I'm quite happy with the final result. Now, as you can see, this is what I've been using in my videos recently. This is flexible. It's got a magnetic back to it, but it's writable. So you can actually write on this and then rub it out. It's a dry erase marker. So and there, okay, or D and D. And then of course all I need to do is just grab my eraser and then just rub out the dry erase marks. So this is the sort of thing I thought would be really useful for my videos, for running the game as well, when I'm running the game as the Dungeon Master, and also if I had one I could give one to the players so they could write down initiative or other things that they thought would be useful or interesting and then just rub it out. So it would be super useful. So hence I decided I would make one. Now my problem was, which is why I didn't do the video straight away, is air bubbles. Getting air bubbles in this thing is a real problem, and it tends to happen almost every single time. But what I did discover is if you stick it on your fridge and leave it long enough and just press the bubbles down, eventually all of the air bubbles disappear. The real enemy is dirt. If you get dirt underneath there, getting the grit or dirt out is just almost impossible. So the good news is it's fairly simple to do, and it's not that expensive, and probably you want to make more than one. That's what I found. I found that making more than one would be the best way to go. So what I've got here is whiteboard adhesive sheet. I actually didn't have to pay for this. I just got it from a friend. So this is whiteboard adhesive sheet, and you just unroll it. It's got an adhesive back to it, and I just stick it on to wherever I want to go. I've got a steel ruler for cutting around the edges. I've got myself a little knife for cutting it up, just tidying it up later. I've got a pair of scissors just in case the knife doesn't do the job. And I bought this at the hardware store. This is just a sheet of magnetic strip. You know, you can cut it out to any shape you like. You can make it smaller or bigger. It's also adhesive, so you can stick something to it. It's the sort of thing that you see when you are being inundated by real estate agents and they want you to know about everything that they are trying to sell, which is basically their services. So I bought this and I thought, well, what I'll do is I'll stick some of that adhesive sheet to it, and that's what I've got. It's just the right size. It's not too big, it's not too small, it's just what I'm after. So all I need to do is line this up, get my piece of adhesive whiteboard sheet about the right size. A little bit of overhang is always nice. And my first step, and this is the tricky part, is trying to make sure that you sort of get it where you need it to be. So make sure there's no dirt on your mat, because that will transfer over to your product when you're finally finished. Don't worry so much about the air bubbles, but what I've got is I've got myself the edge of a book. An edge of a book will actually help you push all of the air bubbles out as you go. So that's what I'm going to do. So I take off the adhesive strip on the back there. Try not to touch it too much if you can help it. I'm using my fingernails in this case, so I take off that and then just leave it. Drop that on the ground somewhere where the junk is, and then I get my adhesive sheet and I need to peel off just a corner, and I'm going to sort of slowly feed it across there, and then that should give me a flexible whiteboard which I can use for many different things. And of course, you know, when you're making things like this, your missus or your family are always saying, oh, you know, you're just making it for the purpose of Dungeons and Dragons. But what you do is you make one of these for your Dungeons and Dragons game as the Dungeon Master. You make one for your players, and you make one for the household to stick on the fridge and say, no, it's not always about Dungeons and Dragons. Sometimes I do make things that are useful for the household. Okay, so we're going to just start placing down the first strip. Now you can see I'm sticking it straight onto my mat. I'm using an Army Painter mat in this case, and I'm going to try to sort of push the air bubbles out as I go. It's not so easy to do, and we'll just rub that down. Now don't get too concerned about the air bubbles. I was always sort of freaking out and thinking, oh no, it's not going to be right, so there's air bubbles in there, how am I going to get rid of them later? But honestly, the air bubbles just come out over time, so don't freak out if it doesn't look quite perfect the first time round. Okay, and then we'll just keep feeding that over. Get the basics sorted. There we go. There's a big air bubble there, but I don't think we'll need to worry too much about it. I'll deal with it later. Keep going. It's the really big ones that you want to try to avoid if you can. And we'll just keep feeding it across. Feed it across. As you can see, I'm just working my way across. Oh, this is the notes for my players videos. Alright, so we keep going. And we're getting there, almost halfway now. Hopefully I've got enough of this sheet left. I didn't really think too much about checking that completely, did I? Alright, so we're getting there. So you can see that it is coming out. The air bubbles are sort of formed in the front here, but I can get them off, that's alright. And a little bit further. Try not to use anything that's too sharp. I've found that if you use sharp objects, that causes more problems than it does good. And as I said, air bubbles will come out over time, so you don't have to freak out about it not working straight away and coming out with a clean, nice product, because gravity is your friend and it will work out most of the problems later on. Okay, and then there we go. Just rub that out a little bit. And also working the bubbles to the outside edge is also very, very handy sometimes. And you know, I'm crazy when I decide to try and do something like this live streamed, but then of course you guys have been around long enough to know that I tend to do things that are crazy. I continue to do them, and I probably will continue to do them for a very long time. And the question is whether we're going to have enough strip. Oh, see, this is the thing I was worried about, is whether it would stick to the back of this. I don't really want it to stick to the back of that. Okay, let's keep going. We're almost there. Work it in, work it in. A little bit of a technical issue along the way, but we're almost to the end. And now grab your book and just feed it across the bubbles that you can see. If it's not perfect, it won't matter. Pushing to the outside. You guys have probably done this with your phones before anyway, so it's not right like it's new information. And most of the bubbles will be gone, and honestly in a couple of months you'll find that any bubbles that you couldn't get rid of this time round will just disappear, just using gravity and the occasional push the bubble to the outside edge over the weeks, and she's all ready to go. Alright, okay, so that's got most of that sorted out. I'm going to ditch the book, so I don't need that anymore, and it's time to cut around that outside edge. Now I think when I last did this, what I did is I just did a rough cut, I didn't do a pretty tidy cut, just to get rid of some of the scrap. And then I did the rest of it after that, so that's exactly what I'm going to do. So I've got my steel ruler, and I got a knife, and I just cut it along there, and then it should just peel away without too much trouble. Make sure the knife is good and sharp. I'll do that again. Voila. Stripped away, and then again. And I'm just doing a quick rough cut. I'm not doing the tidy cut just yet. With my finger, cutting towards yourself, or not the smartest thing. Okay, just lift up. It's stuck on there real good now. Can I get a corner off on the side? Yep, there we go. Good. Get rid of that. Do the same thing again. About there. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it upside down to do the final cut, so I can actually see where the magnetic sheet is in comparison to the white board sheet material, because otherwise I might wind up cutting into the magnetic strip, which I don't really want to do. Okay, so now that that's done, put that knife back in there for a second, and all we're going to do is just lift up a corner like so, unpeel it. There we go. Alright, there we go. So now we're ready to sort of line up our knife and our sharp knife and our steel ruler along the strip where the magnetic strip is. You'll find that if you're using decent metal, it'll stick to the back side pretty good. But if you're using metal that isn't sort of particularly pure, and it's got all sorts of like stuff in it that's kind of cheap and nasty, it doesn't stick very well because there's too much going on there. Alright, okay. Magnetic sheet is not particularly powerful in terms of a magnet anyway, so if you are unsure about whether you should be using it for sticking things on, you'll find that sticking things on is not so easy, because magnetic sheet is not a very strong magnet. But it will stick onto your fridge good enough. Alright, so we've got that there, and then we'll just cut along there. Oops, get the blade in there. I feel like I might have missed it. And then just run the edge along there. Good, that's that one done. Two more sides, and we're finished. Here we go. Line it up. The magnet is trying to pull itself into place, so I don't have to hold down too hard. It's not kind of useful. So I just run that edge along there, score it one more time. Yep, that's got it. And we're almost done. Get this, line it up, there we go. Get that ruler in place. And one more cut should do it. Just like that. I'll score it one more time. Ha! Ha 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 ha. Alright, put the knife back in there without stabbing myself. It's too late. No, I'm only kidding. Okay, so there it is. You'll notice that there are some air bubbles over here, but honestly, this one came out a lot better than the last one. And, you know, the last one I made, which has no air bubbles in it now, this is the one I made last time, had a lot worse air bubbles, and all of those air bubbles came out. So that means that this one shouldn't have any major issues. You should be able to push most of those air bubbles out to the outside edge, or just leave them for gravity to do most of the work. And hey, I have just made a flexible, small whiteboard that I can write on and use in my game of Dungeons and Dragons. And if I make another one, I can give it to my players to use as well when they need to make notes. And if I make a third one, then I can then tell the missus or the husband that my hobby of Dungeons and Dragons doesn't revolve around just making stuff like miniatures and terrain and notes and books and folders, that I am contributing to the household in some way. So if you liked this video, if you found it useful or helpful in any way, please consider liking and sharing the video. Also too, subscribe if you haven't subscribed. I do this sort of thing quite often, not necessarily making this sort of product, but I make a lot of miniatures and I do a lot of miniature painting, so you're welcome to sort of check that sort of thing out. I have videos for players and dungeon masters, so if you want to support the channel, you supported my channel by watching this video. I have many more videos you can check out if you really want to. Hundreds of them, hundreds and hundreds, for players and dungeon masters. I don't do Patreon, but down in the description you'll find affiliate links to the book depository and Amazon, where you can buy stuff online. I get a small commission, you pay exactly the same price, and that helps support me to keep doing this sort of thing, buy materials, stuff like that. Now, if you have any questions, if you have any feedback, if you would like to add something, maybe you've made one yourself and you did a better job than I did, then let me know right now in the live chat. If you're not part of the live stream, use the comment section. That's what it's there for. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. Oh yeah, roll them good.